Okay, so we're back for the second half of this Reconstruction review, a review of our Reconstruction lecture and discussions in class. Hopefully, this will help you out in preparation for our upcoming quiz. Another thing I've provided for you and posted up on Edmodo, also sent it out through Remind today, is this bulleted list of key terms, concepts that I think you'll find useful, using it as a kind of a checklist as you prepare for the quiz. But we left off yesterday. We left off with the first part of this video, with the end of presidential Reconstruction. So, as President Reconstruction begins to wind down, as the President Johnson, declares the end of Reconstruction in 1866, it's the successful end. All of the states had been brought back into the Union under his policies. Republicans begin to react to it. They're reacting to the return of white power in the South and the lack of civil rights for African Americans. They'll pass the Civil Rights Act of 1866, which, as we said in part one, the president vetoes. This veto is overridden. The Congress will vote to extend the Freedmen's Bureau, to reauthorize the Freedmen's Bureau, with the Freedmen's Bureau Act of 1866 also vetoed, also overridden. So what we have now is this power struggle taking place between the president and between the president and Congress. And as it looks here in 1866, things seem to be leaning towards the radicals in Congress. Then we have the midterm election of 1866. And that will mark the end of presidential Reconstruction and the beginning of Congressional Reconstruction, because when the new Congress is sworn in at the beginning of 1877, Republican control in Congress has expanded. Now we've reached the point where Republicans have pretty much secured a veto-proof majority. If moderates and radicals can stick together, if they can hold that coalition together, then they can pretty much drive through Congress anything that they want to accomplish. They can take over the reins of Reconstruction. So when they begin to pass legislation in 1867, what they'll essentially do is scrap presidential Reconstruction, start with a clean slate, and divide up the South into these 5 military districts with the passage of the first Reconstruction Act in 1867. They'll then pass another Reconstruction Act. They're going to send the military down to kind of take control of the South, essentially instituting martial law or close to it in the South. Each of these military districts will come under the control of a military general, and they'll restart the process of Reconstruction. They'll also pass and eventually send for ratification to the states the 14th Amendment, which will effectively overturn the Dred Scott decision, providing the ground rules for citizenship, establishing who is a citizen of the United States. It will also guarantee access to the Bill of Rights, rights from the Bill of Rights to all citizens. Also, the right to due process. So the 14th Amendment goes a long way towards providing for blacks, freed slaves, the kinds of rights that radicals in Congress wanted them to enjoy. Those things that were avoided or neglected under presidential Reconstruction. So we see this. We see Congress beginning to drive the Reconstruction train, and the president will still try to slow things down. And one of the things he's going to do to try to slow things down is try to control the military from within his administration. The military that has been put in control of executing Reconstruction in the South. Johnson's going to try to control that through the Secretary of the War Department in his own administration. And to do that, he feels like he needs to get rid of the Secretary of War who had been there under Lincoln, Edward Stanton, and replace him with his own Secretary of War. Congress, in order to head off the president in trying to do this, passes the Tenure of Office Act in 1867, essentially saying that while the Senate holds the responsibility for confirming any appointees to the president's cabinet, it should also have the power to control or vote on those trying to be removed from these cabinet positions. The president will ignore this new act. He'll put into the remove Stanton and replace him with U.S. Grant. That'll set off the process of impeachment. Radicals in Congress will view this as a breaking of the law by the president. They'll vote to impeach the president, send the articles of impeachment to the Senate, and the Senate will vote ultimately to not remove Johnson from office, saving him by just a single vote. But this has pretty much driven the Johnson administration to the point where any chance of re-election in 1868 is kind of slipped away. It's important to note that during this struggle, during this controversy over the War Department, the head of the War Department, U.S. Grant is going to pull himself out of the controversy once the process of impeachment begins. And will resign that position. So it really will end up not serving Johnson well in any respect, even though he will ultimately retain his office. So let's talk a little bit about Reconstruction under the Radicals. As these new states, or as these southern states begin to re-enter the Union under Republican or Congressional Reconstruction, all of the legislatures in the South will come under the control of the Republican Party. There's a really firm Republican coalition now that is seizing control of all of these offices in the South. Free blacks on the one hand, who are now fully participating in the political process, carpetbaggers from the North, those that have come down to the South to take advantage of economic, political opportunities, but also to help in this transition from slavery towards freedom. Scallywags, Southerners who had sided with Republicans in Reconstruction. This will be a pretty firm Republican hold on the political situation in the South. Election of 1868 rolls around. Grant is elected president, and that bodes well for radicals in Congress. Now Republicans also hold the White House, and for much of U.S. Grant's first administration, it'll serve radicals well. They'll push through the passage of the 15th Amendment. They'll pass that on to the states, add that as a condition for any states that had not yet re-entered the Union to ratify the 15th Amendment, essentially giving the vote to freed blacks, establishing who can vote. Of course, as we mentioned in class, women still won't be included in that. But things are going pretty well here for Republicans in Congress in putting forth everything they want to accomplish with Reconstruction. And then we start to see some situations come to pass that are going to start chipping away at the things that the Republicans have accomplished in the South. One of them is the creation of these white supremacy groups in the South, such as the Ku Klux Klan. So this is going to be a backlash to the newfound freedoms for blacks and political participation by blacks in the South. Ku Klux Klan, the KKK, other like-minded organizations will target blacks, will use intimidation tactics, terror, to scare blacks away from participating in the process. They'll also target whites, carpetbaggers, scallywags, anyone they see as participating in this process of Reconstruction. Congress will try to respond to that by passing the Enforcement Acts of 1870 and 71, but they'll have limited effect on the Klan's ability to exercise terror. And that terror will extend back into the northern states, with people just starting to get a distaste for and starting to tire of the process of Reconstruction. In 1872, we start to see the decline of radical Reconstruction, beginning with the Amnesty Act of 1872. In one full swoop, 150,000 former Confederates will regain access to the political process in the South. We'll start to see them chip away at the Republican majorities held in all of these reconstituted Southern governments. And then in 1873, as economic panic strikes, as the Depression begins, we'll really see Americans, particularly in the North, start to pull away their support for Reconstruction. In fact, there'll be a bit of a backlash. They'll look to the government and blame the government for the economic problems facing the country. They'll charge that too much attention has been paid to Reconstruction and not enough attention being paid to other important issues in the country. So in the midterm election of 1874, the country will sweep Republicans largely out of office, handing control of Congress back to Democrats for the first time since 1856. These Southern redeemers, these Southerners with newfound political leadership, will begin to dismantle Republican or radical Reconstruction. The election of 1876 will really mark the end of radical Reconstruction and Reconstruction altogether. Having gone through a scandal-ridden second term, Grant will not seek re-election in 1876. It'll be a match between Samuel Tilden and Rutherford B. Hayes. It's a close election. The Democrat Tilden comes out on top in both the popular and electoral vote, but some controversial votes in South Carolina, in Florida, in Louisiana have led to Congress taking over control of the election and deciding in the House of Representatives who will win the election. The committee that's formed will strike a bargain, a compromise of sorts, in which Rutherford B. Hayes, the Republican, will win the election in return for his removal of all military presence out of the southern states. That's going to pretty much signal the end of Reconstruction. By the end of 1877, most of the southern states will come back under the control of the Democratic power, and what we really have is a full redemption of the Old South, with everything pretty much except for slavery in place. So what happens in the wake of Reconstruction? What we see happening is almost a complete reversal of all of the gains made, both through presidential Reconstruction and then through Republican Reconstruction after that. But there are some successes. The U.S. was made whole again. This whole debate that started the Civil War to begin with between states' rights and federalism is finally settled. The federal government comes out of the Civil War and Reconstruction period much stronger than it went in. We now talk about the United States as one single unit instead of a collection of semi-independent states. We have the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments that will, while won't establish or won't give rights, blacks won't enjoy all of the rights involved in that for some time. At least it provides the constitutional backing for the civil rights movement that will work over the next 100 years to provide these civil rights for blacks. And then we have the birth of black schools and churches that become the center of black society in the South. Of course, overall, we often refer to the period of Reconstruction as a failure. Southern Democrats will overturn almost all of what is accomplished. Black codes and Jim Crow laws will come to rule the day and in essence limit blacks in most areas of their lives and take away most of their rights and civil liberties through state law. And it won't be until the 1960s when the civil rights movement is finally successful in bringing some of those civil rights, some of those some of the civil liberties back to blacks. So Reconstruction in the end, I'll let you decide whether it was a success or failure. Historians have fallen on the side of mostly a failure, but it at least pushes us forward, at least gives us some constitutional backing for what's to come. I know that was really a whirlwind of coverage, but don't forget, make sure you review all the key concepts, and we'll see you tomorrow.